Every year, millions of people flood stores, chasing the biggest sales of the year. Black Friday, a day where bargains are made, but for some, it's a day when a darker force awakens. Welcome to Midnight Dread. Tonight, I'll take you on a journey into the curse of Black Friday, a haunting tale of what happens when greed, desperation, and the supernatural collide. Some stories are meant to be heard, others are best left forgotten. This one is something you'll never forget. It was the night before Black Friday, in a quiet town called Eastwood, nestled on the coast of Maine. The town was small, its population no more than a few thousand. The streets were lined with old houses, most of which had been built in the late 1800s. Eastwood was the kind of place where nothing ever really happened. Nothing big, nothing extraordinary. It was a place where people lived simple lives, their days revolving around work, family, and the occasional trip to the grocery store. But this Black Friday would be different. It would change everything. At the heart of the town stood an old, run-down department store called Harrows. The building was massive, a relic from a time long past. It had been there for over a century, and though it had been renovated over the years, it still retained an eerie, old-world charm. People had long ago stopped shopping there. It was outdated, and the prices were high for what it offered. But every year, when Black Friday rolled around, Harrows would hold a massive sale. People came from all over, even from neighboring towns, lured by the promise of unheard-of discounts. It was said that Harrows had a history, one tied to a terrible event. Years ago, long before it became the outdated department store it was now, the building had once been a grand mansion owned by the wealthy Whitmore family. A mansion so beautiful, it had been the jewel of Eastwood. But one cold November night, a fire broke out, and the mansion was reduced to ashes. No one knew how the fire started, but many whispered that it wasn't an accident. Some even said it was an act of arson, but the truth was buried with the Whitmore family. The fire claimed the lives of everyone inside, or so it was thought. Over the years, there had been rumors that the spirits of the Whitmore family still roamed the grounds, trapped in a place of their own making. But for most people, those stories were just that, stories, until one fateful Black Friday. Lily Carter was a young woman in her mid-20s, with an obsession for Black Friday sales. She had worked tirelessly for months, saving up money for the one day she could get everything she wanted at a fraction of the price. She had heard whispers about the strange happenings at Harrows, but Lily wasn't one to believe in superstitions. She was practical, logical, and had no time for ghost stories. On the night of the sale, Lily arrived early, eager to get the best deals. The store was still dark, but the front doors were already open, welcoming customers. A chill ran through her as she stepped inside. It wasn't cold, but something about the atmosphere felt off. The air was thick, like something was hanging in the balance. She shrugged it off as excitement. After all, it was just a store, right? As the clock ticked down to midnight, the store filled with people. They rushed to the aisles, grabbing electronics, clothes, and toys with an intensity that bordered on madness. Lily, determined to get the discounted TV she had been eyeing for weeks, pushed her way through the crowds, ignoring the increasing discomfort creeping up her spine. But something wasn't right. As she moved deeper into the store, she noticed that the layout seemed different. The aisles that had once been well organized were now chaotic, disorienting. The shelves seemed to change places, and in the distance, she thought she saw something, or someone. It was a figure, standing motionless at the end of an aisle. Lily's heart skipped a beat, and for a moment, she hesitated. But before she could process what she had seen, a cold gust of wind swept through the store. The lights flickered, casting strange shadows across the walls. The crowd gasped in unison, but Lily couldn't tear her eyes away from the figure in the distance. Slowly, it turned and began to move toward her. She couldn't see its face, but she knew it was coming for her. Lily froze, her heart pounded in her chest as the figure drew nearer. It was tall, impossibly tall, and its movements were jerky, unnatural. As it reached her, the lights flickered again, and Lily's vision blurred. When the lights stabilized, the figure was gone. But the air, it was heavy now, suffocating. And Lily knew deep down that something terrible had just awakened. Harrows had been cursed long before Lily stepped foot inside. The Whitmore family, who once lived in the mansion, were not the first to suffer the wrath of the curse. Their ancestors had made a pact with a dark force long ago, a force that fed on greed, on desire, and on those who sought to exploit it. In exchange for wealth and prosperity, the Whitmore family had agreed to allow the entity to take control when the time was right. and that time had come. The fire that destroyed the Whitmore mansion wasn't an accident. It was the entity's doing. The mansion had burned down as a warning. The curse was not over. It had only just begun. Over the years, the store had changed hands, but the curse remained. Harrows was built on the ruins of the Whitmore mansion, and each Black Friday, the spirits of the cursed family were bound to the store, trapped between worlds, hungry for the souls of those who entered. The more people who stepped inside, the stronger the curse became. And now, the spirits were calling, drawing others into their eternal prison. As the night wore on, Lily couldn't shake the feeling that something was terribly wrong. She tried to ignore it, telling herself it was just the stress of the crowds and the chaos of the sale. But the strange occurrences continued. Shelves seemed to shift when she wasn't looking. The sound of footsteps echoed through the aisles, but no one was there. And the temperature in the store seemed to drop with each passing minute. Then it happened. A scream pierced the air. A woman, one of the shoppers, ran past Lily, her face contorted in terror. She was shouting, but the words were unintelligible. It was as if she had seen something that had broken her mind. Lily followed her, but the woman had vanished. There was no sign of her anywhere. Lily's mind raced. What was happening? Was it just her imagination, or was something truly wrong? Lily decided to leave the store, but as she reached the front doors, they slammed shut, locking her in. Panic set in. She turned around, her heart pounding, and ran down an aisle, only to find herself facing a wall she hadn't seen before. The aisles were closing in on her, the store shifting in ways she couldn't understand. That's when she saw it, the hidden door. It was small, almost unnoticeable, tucked away behind a stack of old inventory. The door creaked open as if it had been waiting for her. She stepped through, her curiosity overcoming her fear. The hallway was dimly lit, the walls covered in dust and cobwebs. As she walked deeper, she could hear whispering, faint voices calling her name. The air grew heavier with each step, suffocating her. At the end of the hallway, she found herself standing in front of an ancient wooden door. The whispers were now deafening, a chorus of tortured souls. Lily knew she had to turn back, but something compelled her to open the door. She hesitated for a moment, but then the door creaked open on its own. Inside, the room was dark, and the air was thick with the smell of smoke and ash. The walls were covered in scorch marks, remnants of the fire that had once consumed the mansion. But as Lily stepped inside, she saw something that made her blood run cold. In the center of the room, a figure stood, its back to her. It was tall, like the one she had seen earlier, but its form was twisted, its limbs contorted in unnatural angles. It turned slowly, and Lily's blood ran cold as its face came into view. It was not a human face, but something far worse, a grotesque mask of charred flesh and hollow eyes. The figure raised one of its bony, skeletal hands and pointed directly at her, its mouth opening to release an eerie, high-pitched wail that echoed through the room. Lily stumbled backward, her heart hammering in her chest. She turned to run, but the door she had entered through slammed shut with a deafening bang. She was trapped. The whispers returned, louder and more frantic now, swirling around her like a whirlwind. Leave. Leave before it's too late, the voices begged, but Lily didn't know where to go. The darkness had swallowed the room, and the path to escape had vanished. Suddenly, the air grew colder, and the floor beneath her feet seemed to tremble. Shadows stretched and moved, creeping along the walls, crawling closer to her. She could feel the presence of something ancient, something malevolent, closing in around her. It was as if the very building itself had become a living, breathing entity, its walls pulsating with dark energy. The floorboards behind her splintered, and a large, blackened figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing with an unnatural red light. It was the manifestation of the curse itself, an entity bound to the Whitmore family and to the cursed store, feeding on the souls of the desperate and the greedy. The curse had awoken, and now it would claim its next victim. Lily screamed, her voice barely audible over the thunderous beating of her heart. She tried to run, but the creature moved faster, its long, gnarled fingers reaching out to grab her. As its hand closed around her wrist, she felt an icy chill course through her body. The creature's touch was like death itself. It whispered in a voice that was both distant and close, a voice that seemed to come from the very depths of the earth. "Your soul is mine," it hissed. "You cannot escape." Lily fought back, summoning every ounce of strength she had left. She kicked, she struggled, but the creature's grip tightened, dragging her toward the heart of the cursed room. With each step, She felt her strength draining away, her vision blurring. It was as if the very essence of her being was being consumed by the curse. In a last, desperate attempt, Lily reached into her pocket and pulled out the small, silver charm she had carried with her. It was an old family heirloom, a token passed down through generations. She had never believed in its power, but now, in the face of death, she had no other choice. With trembling hands, she held the charm up in front of her, chanting the words her grandmother had taught her, the words that had been passed down through her bloodline. The air around her shimmered as the charm began to glow, the light intensifying until it was almost blinding. The creature howled in pain, its form twisting and writhing as if it were being torn apart by the light. It recoiled, its grip loosening for just a moment. And that was all Lily needed. She wrenched herself free and bolted toward the door. The shadows tried to grab her. The floor seemed to shift beneath her feet, but she didn't stop. She ran, her breath ragged, her mind racing with thoughts of escape. She didn't know how long she had been running or where she was, but she could hear the sound of her own footsteps echoing in the darkness, growing louder, until... bang! The door burst open in front of her, and Lily stumbled out into the store once more. But the moment she stepped into the main aisles of Harrows, she realized something was terribly wrong. The store was empty, the once crowded aisles were silent, and the flickering lights cast eerie shadows that seemed to move on their own. As she looked around, she saw the familiar aisles, but they were twisted and distorted, as if the store itself had become a maze of nightmares. The walls seemed to close in. The air grew colder, and the whispers returned, louder than ever. "It's not over. You can't escape. The curse is still with you." Lily's heart pounded in her chest as she turned, looking for a way out. The front doors, which had once been locked, were now wide open. But as she approached them, she saw something that made her stop in her tracks. In the doorway stood the figure, the one she had seen earlier. The creature. Its eyes glowed with an intense, fiery red light, and its face twisted in an expression of pure malice. It reached out, its long fingers stretching toward her, and Lily felt an overwhelming force pull her back, as if the store itself were trying to claim her soul. "No," she cried, but the voice that answered her was not her own. "You belong to us," the curse whispered, its voice seeping into her mind, wrapping around her thoughts like a vice. Forever. In that moment, Lily knew there was no escape. The curse of Black Friday had claimed her, and she would never leave Harrows. Her soul would be trapped within its walls, doomed to wander the aisles for eternity, forever part of the dark force that haunted the store. The disappearance of Lily Carter shook the town of Eastwood. Her friends, her family, everyone believed she had simply gotten caught up in the chaos of Black Friday and left with the crowd. But when Lily didn't return home, a search was launched, and the town began to realize that something far more sinister was at play. In the weeks following Lily's disappearance, more and more strange things began to happen in Eastwood. People spoke of hearing whispers in the night, seeing figures standing at the windows of Harrows, watching the town. Some said they saw Lily's face in the windows, her eyes pleading for help. The town was never the same again. Harrows, once a bustling department store, was abandoned. The once lively Black Friday sales turned into an annual event that everyone tried to avoid. And those who dared to step foot inside the cursed store spoke of the same thing. Strange, unexplainable events, the presence of something dark, something that was always watching. Years later, a group of local teenagers dared to uncover the truth about the curse. They ventured into the town cemetery where the Whitmore family was buried. They had heard the stories, the legends that had been passed down through generations, and they wanted to find out if there was any truth to them. As they dug through the dirt, they uncovered an old, weathered tombstone, one that had been forgotten by time. The name on the stone was familiar to them, Whitmore. The date etched into the stone marked the day of the fire, but what they found next sent chills down their spines. Beneath the tombstone, they found a hidden compartment containing an old journal, yellowed with age. It was the journal of William Whitmore, the patriarch of the family. Inside, they found a chilling account of the pact his ancestors had made with the dark force, the entity that had cursed their bloodline. The journal spoke of a time when the curse would rise again, when the darkness would take control and claim the souls of those foolish enough to seek the riches the Whitmores had once enjoyed. And in the final entry, William Whitmore wrote, "The curse will never end. It will wait silently until Black Friday returns." The curse of Black Friday did not end with Lily Carter. it did not end with the Whitmore family. It is a curse that lingers, waiting for the next person to fall victim to its dark allure. The doors of Harrows remain closed, but the whispers continue to call, urging the curious, the greedy, the desperate to step inside. Because once you enter, the curse will claim you, and you will never leave. And so, every Black Friday, the shadows grow darker, the whispers grow louder, and the cursed store waits for its next victim. Years had passed since Lily's disappearance, and the curse of Black Friday had faded into whispers, only spoken in hushed tones by those who dared remember. Harrows had long been abandoned, its doors sealed shut, its windows boarded. But even so, the darkness lingered in the air around it like a shadow, ever present, ever watchful. Then came Black Friday once again. The same chill in the air, the same tension that gripped Eastwood every year when the town remembered the cursed history of Harrows. This time, however, the whispers were not just rumors. They were warnings. In the years following the disappearance, a few brave souls had ventured into the store in search of answers. None of them ever returned. A new group of people, young and restless, sought out the abandoned store, drawn to it by the legends and their own curiosity. They had no idea that they were about to become part of the curse's never-ending cycle. It was a bitterly cold evening when 5 teenagers, Jake, Ava, Sam, Isabel, and Carter, stood in front of the long-abandoned Harrows. Their breath hung in the air like mist as they stared up at the building, its dark silhouette cutting through the moonlight. They were skeptical, more in it for the thrill than any belief in the supernatural. To them, it was just a haunted store, a relic of a time long past. Jake, the leader of the group, laughed nervously. "This is it, guys. One last stop before we call it a night. We'll just take a quick look inside, maybe film a bit for the Graveyard Ghosts channel. It'll be fun." Ava, the skeptic of the group, raised an eyebrow. "Jake, I'm not sure about this. The stories about this place, they're not just stories. There's something seriously wrong with Harrows." But Carter, ever the thrill seeker, clapped his hands together. "Come on, Ava. It's just a store. It's been abandoned for years. What could go wrong?" They all reluctantly agreed, following Jake as he led them toward the front door of Harrows. As they approached, a strange sound filled the air, a low hum, as if the building itself were alive. The door, once sealed shut, creaked open slowly, seemingly of its own accord. Sam, the most hesitant of the group, pulled back. "Did you hear that? The door just opened by itself." Jake stepped forward confidently. "It's just an old building settling, guys. Nothing to worry about." With a deep breath, they all stepped inside. The air was thick with dust, the smell of rot and decay hanging heavily in the space. The walls were covered in peeling wallpaper, and the remnants of forgotten sales displays littered the aisles. Yet, despite the ruin, there was something else, something darker, a presence. As the group ventured deeper into the store, their flashlights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. The further they went, the heavier the atmosphere became, like a weight pressing down on their chests. Every corner seemed to hold something just out of sight. Every floorboard creaked under their feet. Sam jumped at every little noise, his eyes darting nervously around the store. Isabel stopped in front of a broken display. "Look at this," she said, her voice trembling. "It's an old Black Friday advertisement. But why would it be left here? This store hasn't been open in years." Jake glanced at the ad. It was faded, but the words were still legible. "The biggest sale of the year. Everything must go." Below it was a picture of the Whitmore family, smiling broadly in front of the store. Their faces looked almost too perfect, eerily so. Ava shuddered. "This doesn't feel right. We should leave. Now." But Jake dismissed her concerns. "Come on, we've come this far. Let's check out the back storage room. I've heard rumors that the Whitmore family kept all sorts of strange things in there." Reluctantly, the group followed Jake as he led them toward the back of the store. The air grew colder with each step, and the whispers returned, soft and unintelligible at first, like a distant murmur. But as they approached the storage room door, the whispers grew louder, clearer. Suddenly, the door swung open by itself, revealing the pitch-black void inside. The smell of something foul wafted out from within, making them gag. Carter stepped forward. "I'll go first," he said with a smirk, but his bravado didn't mask the terror in his eyes. As he crossed the threshold, the temperature dropped sharply. A shadow darted across the room, almost too fast to see. Ava gasped, her breath catching in her throat. "Did you see that?" she whispered. Before anyone could respond, the door slammed shut behind Carter. Panic erupted as they rushed to open it, but it was stuck fast. Inside the storage room, Carter tried to pry open the door, but it was futile. The room seemed to stretch infinitely, and the shadows in the corners of the room seemed to grow larger and more menacing. The walls appeared to move as if they were alive. Carter's flashlight flickered wildly, casting erratic beams of light that caught glimpses of horrific things. Ancient, decaying mannequins, strange symbols etched into the walls, and old, rotting furniture piled high. A loud crash echoed behind them, followed by a voice. "Leave! Leave now!" It was Carter's voice, but it sounded distorted, as if coming from deep within the earth. His face, when they finally managed to open the door, was ashen, his eyes wide with terror. Before anyone could speak, the air shifted and a dark figure appeared at the far end of the room, tall, cloaked, and surrounded by an eerie red glow. It raised a hand, and the temperature plummeted, frost forming on the floor beneath their feet. "You should never have come here," the figure whispered in a voice that was both ancient and modern. "This place is cursed." Ava screamed, stumbling backward, but the figure's presence was suffocating. The curse of Black Friday had returned with a vengeance, and the teens were caught in its grasp. The group managed to escape Harrows, but not without losing something. Part of their souls were taken by the curse, consumed by the very building that had once been the site of their greatest fear. The town of Eastwood would never be the same again. As they left the store, the whispers continued, calling to them from the shadows. They could feel the curse closing in, pulling them back toward Harrows, toward their inevitable doom. And in the end, they learned the horrifying truth. Black Friday, the day of greed and consumption, was not just a shopping event. It was the day the curse awoke, seeking more souls to devour. The curse of Black Friday does not rest. It waits in the shadows, biding its time until another year, another cycle. Those who enter Harrows are never the same. And each year, as Black Friday approaches, more souls are claimed. The building, now a mere shell of its former self, continues to draw the curious, the greedy, the desperate into its clutches. Once they step through the door, there is no escape. And so the cycle repeats. Will you be next? Will you walk through the doors of Harrows, where the whispers call and the curse waits patiently for its next victim? Or will you heed the warning and never go near Black Friday again? As the whispers fade into the night and the shadows recede, remember this: some places are best left unexplored, and some stories are meant to remain untold. Harrows is a place where time stands still, where the curse of Black Friday will continue to claim the souls of the curious and the greedy. Every year, the whispers grow louder, the shadows darker, and with each passing Black Friday, the store's hunger only grows stronger. Thank you for joining us on this chilling journey. If you dare to learn more, to dive deeper into the darkness, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Who knows what secrets we'll uncover next? Until then, stay safe, and remember, some things are better left undisturbed. This has been Midnight Dread. Sleep tight if you can.